You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to continue down this profitability, kind of conversations we've been having as a whole. Top of mind, obviously, for everybody, AVNs, ongoing, still ongoing, all this stuff that goes on, especially around Amazon, anything in the marketplaces. And so I had a mutual friend connect me over to JD here from Axiom. Just had a great conversation and just helping a lot of brands in a unique way, but in a way that around returns as a whole and managing those across the marketplaces. And we can jump into Amazon or whatever it is. But it was just a really cool conversation and something that it doesn't come up in a lot of conversations, return specifically, but a lot of the conversations I mentioned around profitability as a whole. But JD, I'd like to kick it over to you. Do you want to jump in like a intro on yourself and Axiom and what you guys are doing and your background and all this fun stuff? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, Aaron, I love it, man. Thanks for asking me to come on. And this is certainly a part of the conversation. So my name's JD Sass. I'm one of the founders of Axiom Return Solutions. I think we started initially, returns kind of came about organically. I wouldn't call it an accident, but somewhat organically. We were kind of selling a little bit on Amazon and it started, got in a warehouse. It started a little prep center, and we had a business partner at the time whose family member was selling on .com from overseas. She had a bunch of returns sitting at a 3PL. They weren't doing anything with it. She's paying storage. The inventory is now stale, right? It's past the return claim window. They're not reintegrating any new stuff back into Amazon. She says, hey, can you guys just help me resell these? And so she told her friends, they told their friends, and we're now in year 3. We're in our 3rd warehouse, working with a couple hundred brands, agencies, accelerators, resellers, wholesalers, specifically as a reverse logistics provider, right? And what we do, macro, we become the return removal address, right? If you sell on .com or wherever with Amazon, you have to have an address and your stranded inventory, your automated fulfillable and unfulfillable, for example. The removals have to go somewhere, right? You can dispose, you can liquidate, or remove the inventory. And there's a lot to talk about, even from that standpoint right there. But we are a physical receipt, or receiving end of the inventory. So we receive, inspect, grade, scan everything on inbound, reintegrate back to primary sales channels, resell on secondary channels, liquidation, the big part too, what we do to drive revenue. We talk about profitability. This will come into play for sure, is filing claims on your fraudulent returns and damaged or missing removals. That's a big part of what we do, right? And you have to take pictures of the products to file these types of claims. It's all tracked in a dashboard. We give a bunch of data back to the brands on the front end that we work with to drive the decision-making processes, right? You talk about profitability. This is a big part, and it is not being done. On a large scale, this is not being done.
I totally agree. Yeah. So here, previously, right, on the brand side,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I just had a damage allowance and I was just like, forget about it. And is that what you see most people do? And should they not be doing that? Like, it was one of those one more things I had to do. Oh, there's 150,000 things on my plate. There's one more thing to do. And I don't know. It was easier just to write out like, what's best practice? And is this vendor side? Is this seller side?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So we work both 1P, 3P. The majority of our client base is 3P, right? And so I'll try to keep the conversation there. But typically, it's just baked on the front end, right? Into your landed cost of goods. I'm going to assume, or the brand probably anticipate maybe a 10% return rate, right? So if we're just writing that off, we're just baking that in on the front end. Cool. We're just accepting that loss, right? Or we'll call it, I've heard marketing too. It's just being written off as marketing, which is an interesting approach. But what happens is in Amazon, you even if you choose disposal, right? So in Amazon, the cost to dispose of an item is exactly the same cent for cent right now, at least it was a couple of weeks ago, to remove the item, they're the same, right? So Amazon now, where prior disposal was a cheaper option, they're almost incentivizing you to remove the inventory, right? And so if you can remove this inventory, forget about reintegrating the inventory back to a primary sales channel or filing claims on eligible opportunities, even if you're just offsetting those costs, right? If you're doing 1 million, 10 million, 100 million a year in revenue and you have a 10% return rate, or you're just disposing of 10% of those, those are just being disposed of. What if you're paying $100,000, over the course of a year on those removal or disposal costs? If you offset that, right, without even doing anything else, if you have a provider or a system in place to simply offset that, even by half, a dollar saved is a dollar made in that conversation, right? That just drops right to the bottom line. And what we're able to do a lot of times.
I want to, so I want to go into that a little bit because, like what you're saying is, right. It used to be the cheaper option, and is the juice worth the squeeze at the end of the day? Right.
100%.
That's the reality. And so I think, a lot of people are just like, number one, don't ship stuff back to me. Right. Yeah. I've got a warehouse. Stuff is going out. Stuff is not supposed to come back. My team doesn't like it. I don't know where it goes. It might accidentally get reintegrated somehow. Who knows? Depending on the size of the seller, obviously, and the controls.
Mm-hmm.
But so people are just like, just keep it and throw it in the garbage. And I realize, right, and I can bake it in to my cost of goods sold as a whole. I can just bake that in. But what a lot of people are seeing, right, especially tariffs hit, and that's a whole other podcast as a whole. But how do you manage those costs? But people are trying to understand, as their profitability's gotten squeezed, I might have to start thinking about other options. And so what you're saying now is it's almost equal. So you have the two options. Do they just pay them to get rid of it, or do you have them pay them and you either return it, or I think this is where our conversation, why we got connected, right? I think, was it Andy Berger? Was it?
That's right.
Andy? Yeah.
Andy's awesome, man. That's it. You got it.
Andy's a rock star. I love that guy. He's one of my favorite people in all of digital, just awesome. A straight shooter. And I mean, he's focused on profitability, with Workflow Labs and everything right now. And so it totally makes sense is why not have them, either you can ship it back to yourself and you refer, do you want to pay people to do that? Or this makes total sense why we're connected. Because Andy's really good about, feeding the network with really great options and key partners that help tackle profitability. So ship it to you then?
Yeah. Or and I'm here simply, man, if there's some value I can provide to your audience or anyone listening, that's it. Yeah. We would become.
Well, I think number one is don't just have them throw it away. And number one, is there a threshold on the value, right? Like there's probably things consume, CPG, maybe it doesn't come back in. Maybe chemicals don't come back in.
Yeah.
Is there a threshold where you got to think about the juice is worth the squeeze?
100%. So some of those items, Amazon won't even let you return, right? They just, it's just, you got to keep it, right? There's a threshold where you could utilize Amazon's returnless resolution program, right? If you're selling a $5, $10, maybe $15 product, depending on how strong your margins are, returnless resolution is going to prevent you from having to pay fees coming back into Amazon, right? And then if that inventory isn't it can't be reintegrated or is not sellable again, then you got to pay to remove or dispose, right? And on a large level, dispose in Amazon's terms, when you choose disposal, and this comes into play as well, Amazon can dispose or destroy, recycle, and resell your inventory, right? You waive all rights to the inventory and they can keep any proceeds. Now, brands wanting to curate a positive consumer experience, when you choose disposal, that inventory can then be resold, right? And it'll end up in people's hands, maybe that a brand doesn't want it. Unauthorized resellers, essentially, right? And there's the opportunity there for a reputation to be tarnished or a consumer to purchase a product that might have been counterfeit or used that leaves a bad reputation with the brand. So full brand control is also at play here. But yes.
Would this also end up in warehouse deals?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because this comes up a ton. Here, people like, how does it even get over there? Okay, this makes sense.
Yep. Okay. On disposal, it's in their term. It's in the terms. It's just playing in their sandbox, right? They can resell it and they'll keep all the proceeds, and some of that stuff will get liquidated. Talk to brands. I'm choosing disposal. I don't know how my inventory is ending up being sold over here, it's popping up in retail over here. Well, I mean, this is one of the ways how you can choose liquidation directly through Amazon. That certainly is a way, and and you're committing to that. But disposal is another one. But yeah, man, there's thresholds. Absolutely. Utilizing the returnless resolution program. Um, I think having the inventory removed, it doesn't have to be to a provider like us, even back to themselves, just somewhere where you can offset those costs, right? And reintegrating inventory back into a primary sales channel is a big deal. Having a service provider system in place to inspect, send the new stuff back in, can you refurb or repack? But also, what data are you getting back, right? There are opportunities for improvement across the supply chain or the life cycle of the product. What data are you getting back to optimize the listing to reduce returns? A customer return happens always before an item is ever purchased, right? Is there optimizations that can be made? Production, manufacturing, how the item is packaged. What about your 3PL or your fulfillment center, right? And there's a bunch that advertise that they do returns. And my experience has been, this is not a universal truth, but for the most part, it's just an easy in to get a brand and to get a deal, right? Like we'll just do it all. But what ends up happening is inventory is sitting, becomes stale. They're not filing claims. You talk about profitability. There's no data being provided back to improve, right, how this
Yeah.
inventory is sold, reduce return rates.
Well, they don't want to do it anyways, right? They're doing
Of course
it.
not.
They're like, yes, we can do it. Not, hey, we want to do it and we're great at it. And this is just and brands actually want that too. Again, will you just take it back in? Just get it off the streets, and they'll say yes, which they'll do. But I think to your point, like, are you optimizing that as a whole? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Amazon will call it unsellable, right? And so there's some settings too where you can skip Amazon, where Amazon won't call your inventory sellable or not. You can just skip their grading process and have everything removed. You can select certain ASINs for them to evaluate. But what we see across the categories that we work with, approximately 50% of what is called unsellable is brand new and can be reintegrated right back into Amazon, right? Forget about the claims, forget about the refurb or the repack. There certainly is a threshold where the type of workflow needs to be accommodated for the selling price, or dependent upon how strong the margins are on the item, what you do, right? Are you paying to get really granular with this inventory? Are you doing sheer volume is so significant that you're just trying to offset those disposal or removal costs, and you've already done your due diligence? You know that your recovery through Amazon's liquidation channels is one, time consuming, and two, the return on that, like you said, the juice is not worth the squeeze, right? But man, like when I'm talking with someone, it's always too late. Like people are upset when I get on a call with them. Usually there's, I mean, I'm human too, right? Like I don't change until I hurt enough. Typically, I mean, I wish I could say I was like perfect at it, but until I'm hurting enough in some way, shape, or form, there's not enough incentive there for me to really change, right? And so, what data are you using to drive the decision-making processes around your items? And you're looking for all these other areas. If you got a return rate of 5%, 10%, or like apparel and shoes, 20%, and you don't have a system in place, and most of the time, systems internally are done at scale with very, very large brands or companies doing, a couple hundred million or north a year in revenue, who can afford to do that internally, which is great. Cool. Now you're becoming all these other things. Like now you're becoming a reverse logistics provider and a fulfillment, so like where is the focus? What's going to move the needle for you? And when does it make sense? But truly, like, do you have the data to drive that decision-making process? Is this an informed decision? I wish I could pull. I probably should. I might do that and share it with you. How many times I've actually had people type, "I feel," or my warehouse manager feels this is the.
Yeah.
It's insane. But it just is what it is. And for whatever reason in the Amazon world, that seems to have gone overlooked for a long time.
What size? So you're doing, is it when you hit a threshold of $1 million a year or 100,000 a month? Like what is the threshold where you're saying, hey, you're a brand and you hit this threshold, all of a sudden this is going to be meaningful and important?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with top to bottom, from just south of $1 billion a year in revenue down to maybe $1 million a year in revenue. I think depending on the average selling price of your products will determine if it warrants working together. One, are you having an outlet for that inventory? For us, if you're having, and I always have a conversation, I'm pleased for anyone listening, like consider us a resource, right? If you're having like 100, 200, 300 removals a month, it might warrant looking into. You shouldn't be paying just to dispose of the inventory. At the very least, you could just
Well,
liquidate.
you can get something out of it.
Just something. And it's like, I'm
Even if it's
open.
just the data, like you're saying, like what is going on? Let me take a look at it. And again, like you're here. I mean, obviously you provide a great service, or Andy wouldn't have connected us. But even if you're just getting it back yourself, I think there's two phases. Like just ship it back, and then my guess is in most companies, I mean, I try to talk to 20 to 30 a week. The warehouse team is going to be like, oh, this is awesome. And they're going to set it over in the corner and nobody's going to go through it. But hey, maybe they do, or maybe they have spare time and they can go through it and you can get that to work on your own. If not, they shoot it over to you. And at least you're getting, if it's the same price, at least you're getting some data out of it. Like, oh yeah, nobody likes the handle, right? It opens too hard. Like, I don't know.
100%. That's why Amazon is king, right? This is a consumer friendly platform. And I know as a consumer on Amazon that no matter what, if something's wrong, like I'm just going to get my money back. It doesn't, I'm not advocating this or suggesting I do this, but you can put any reason you want why you're returning the item. That's not always accurate. In those return reports, why the customer is returning the item, it just doesn't always line up. And you don't know unless you're seeing something and touching it every day, like what's really going on, right? And oftentimes, man, it's just as simple like you get an item, right? You're selling a product, and maybe the top has a tamper-proof seal, just a little plastic seal you got to cut to open the top. What about the bottom? The customer can open the bottom, take the item out, use it, switch it out, put it back in. They return it. Amazon gets it. They see that seal is still intact at the top. Now they say it's sellable. It gets resold again. Another customer buys a used item or switched out and leaves a bad review on the brand, right? It's not on Amazon. It's on the brand, takes the hit for that. But how simple? Just add that right at the bottom. So all openings around the box, just add those little safety seals around so that they know when it's returned back to Amazon, if it's popped, guess what? It doesn't need to be reintegrated. It warrants further inspection. Like you said, data. And for us, with the partners we work with, sometimes that means we don't work together anymore. We onboard, we do the stuff, we get some returns, they get some data. Cool. You were making the right decision the whole time, whatever was working before, whatever you're doing before. But now right? Like now there's some data to prove that that's the right decision. And at scale, profitability, it can't be about, at least not long term, about gut feeling, or I think like, let's just get some data. Like how do you do that with any point, right? That's any service provider. That's it. They have case studies, and it took us some time to do that. I think to build a lot of that stuff out and get the data and the case studies to say, oh, this is real. And in Amazon, there's not much out there for sellers to be able to get this data, or even from a service provider standpoint. So,
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of businesses doing it on their own, but I don't know a lot of you out there doing this, right? Like it's pretty, again, on the obviously there's a prep side, like KFON and stuff is doing is super cool, right? All on the prep
crushing
side,
it. Yep.
Packing, kitting, bundling, prepping for FBA and sending in is an awesome business. But on this side, so it shows up, you're going to inspect it. Is there refurb? You said there's reintro. You're looking at a lot of stuff, and I'm going to go back because you were mentioning like what people select. Like I've been there before, right? You're making a return. I didn't even use it, but I'm wondering like, are one of these clicking boxes going to change whether or not they accept the return? So sometimes, and I always worry like I have to just having sold on Amazon, I'm like, okay, I got to click the right one and just, spin the wheel of chances that it might not go back. But I can see a lot of people just clicking the one that they think, didn't fit, or, whatever it is, right? Not right size or whatever the thing might be. So then you inspect it, you're seeing if it's legit or not. but then there's the refurb, the reintroduction. There's,
Yeah.
maybe it's good. There's liquidation. Like, what are all the options that once you get this inventory back in, again, whether they're using you or they're doing it internally, doesn't neither
Yep.
here nor there. What are then the options for that inventory?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, to answer your question, why I'm choosing the return now has drastically changed, I think, than prior to entering into this business. I am. I'll overly explain, I think, in the
Right.
description if Amazon gives you, because I see the harm that it can cause businesses
I'll type in
on a
never
large
opened,
scale.
never used. I'll just type that in: never opened, never used,
Yep.
returning in the same condition I received it. That's I'm totally there with you.
If I open it, man, it is what it is, but yeah, so some of the options are, if you have the inventory removed, to another provider, to yourself internally, to someone like us, um, we will scan everything on inbound, right? So everyone has an interface where we're pulling information in from Seller Central. So when I scan that LPN or that FN SKU or that UPC, we're starting to connect dots, right? We receive these units. That's the first, really the first thing right there, right? If you created 1,000 removals last month and you were expecting to receive 1,000 removals and you only got 900 of them, there's an opportunity for you to file a claim, right? I opened a box and there's only 8, but I was expecting 10, right? This is like on inbound, the very first thing. So I'm scanning, opening, identifying eligibility for a claim, inspecting, grading. Were there fraudulent returns? Are these items new? Can they be sent back into Amazon? If they're not new, based on the grade, what are the resale channels? You have eBay. Do you have any D2C opportunities, right? Where you can capitalize on a secondary consumer. If you're selling a more expensive product, it's an opportunity for you to capture someone. You offer a discounted item, potentially, someone buys it and they love it. Next time they're buying new from you, right? Um, where are those items going secondary? Liquidation is kind of towards the end there, where we're palletizing and liquidating brick and mortar bin stores, flea markets, eBay, Facebook, TikTok, whatnot. We work with partners who are streaming in warehouses, doing that all day long. This is all that they do, right? So there's some good outlets there. Can these items have claims filed? And you have to take pictures right there. So there's always some confusion when I get on calls. Are you guys filing claims? Some of the Three Colts is doing, for example. Love those guys. No, right? We are. You have to take pictures of the product to file the claims that we're filing. By definition, in Amazon's terms, it's customer return and the removal claim, right? You have to take pictures of the shipping label, the LPN, the packing slip that comes in the box, which will say one of 3 things: overstock, damaged, or defective. And then you have to take pictures from top to bottom of the item in the box in question, missing pieces or components. Maybe a set of 5 forks came back with 3 switched out shoes. There's only 8 units and there's supposed to be 10, whatever the case may be. You then provide supporting documentation and file that case right there in Seller Central. You got to follow up with it, right? And we'll store the inventory because sometimes they want more pictures or whatever. At least we have that stuff there where we can do that. And then let's get the inventory back in. Yeah, can you repack it? Oftentimes it's just a brand new item, but the box is blemished. So we'll store OEM packaging, put it in a new box, send it on its way. Inserts are a big one as well. Now, I don't want to keep running here, but I'll just give you an example. I did a pilot. We just did a recent pilot. We did a couple thousand units with a Halloween costume company, and customers were returning a lot of these without the inserts in the clear packaging. You buy a Halloween costume, comes in the clear packaging, there's no insert, or there's an insert there. Customers are removing the inserts and sometimes pieces or components, right? So information now, if that information is not available on a display page on Amazon's listing, on the listing page, they will not approve the claim. So are your listings optimized to capitalize on the reimbursement potential for these claims? I mean, dude, it goes on and on and on, right? Really, really granular. But when you're talking about, $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, $1 billion a year in revenue, and this is an area where you can shave a significant amount of points, right? I'm not talking like half a point. Like if you got a 20% return rate, What if you cut that down 5, 7, 8%? What if you're reintegrating a whole bunch of inventory that's new back into the primary sales channel, right? Return to vendor. Let's get it back to the vendor. Was there a bad production run? How do these guys know, right, that their items are being produced defective if they're not getting that information to put a stop to it? So, and then disposal and donation, depending on how the company's structured, everything is serialized, right? So full chain of custody. Is donation strategically the right play? I don't advocate for it, but we offer also manifested or serialized disposal, right? So I'm saying Axiom, and we own the dumb company too. So Axiom disposed of this inventory accordingly, appropriately, in accordance with whatever the SLA or the scope of work looks like with the partner, to make sure it doesn't end up somewhere it's not supposed to be. And you get your unauthorized resellers, your counterfeit items, working with legal teams to help pin some of that stuff down, right? So it's full scope. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but you can do it internally. And I'll tell you, just listen on Facebook. If you're doing it yourself in a smaller volume, don't waste your time. Just offset those costs, because the cost is the same for you to dispose as it is to remove. So if you're removing that inventory and you're getting anything back on that and it didn't take you a lot of time, it's a win, right? Depending on if you've evaluated Amazon's liquidation direct, if you don't have the means or the resources, just do that. Just keep it simple. Just something where you're able to offset the recovery there. So there's a whole bunch you can do, man, on the backside of things. And I could go on and on, but I think those are just some of the frequent topics of conversation that come up.
It has been absolutely awesome. Like, how do people get a hold of you? Like, is it LinkedIn? Is it website? All that fun stuff. Yeah,
LinkedIn, JD Sass. Feel free to shoot me a message. Website, axiomreturnsolutions.com/contact. You submit a form there and reach out to us. We'll get back to you. I'm happy to. Anyone listening, we'll do pilots, man. Send us a couple hundred returns. We'll do it for free. Just give you some data back. And like, that's the goal, Aaron. We talked about it, man. Our biggest hurdle has just been education. A lot of times brands and partners don't even know about the claims that can be filed, right? There's always a hurdle. It's like, oh, wait, you take pictures to file these claims. Still, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like 10% of what we get, 8 to 12% of what I get, I can file one of those claims on. So there's a good bit that can be done.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, JD, thanks so much for jumping on here today. It's been an absolute, just awesome conversation. Again, encourage everybody, follow up with JD and team at Axiom. Just awesome. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for listening in.
Thanks, Aaron.